right, Athlete Builder back at it. Three of us today. Lucas is back in studio. I'm in the library. We have Missy Mitchell McBeth, 3M, which is a publicly traded company. Missy Mitchell McBeth. Let's talk about her for a little bit. Safe iron training. Let's see. High school sports, college sports. You probably figured that because that's basically everybody on the show. Her shtick is volleyball, but played other sports as well: basketball, track and field. Played indoor, played beach. Does basically been all the way around. Works private sector, works with high school athletes, young and old. Um, Spoke at the PSM conference. Puts out a book. Has her own videos. Has her own course. Been doing it decades. Scott Charlin, shout out to him for connecting us. Missy's a hard worker. Her husband is in the business as well, so it's nonstop between those two and the four dogs. She's coming from us down in Texas. She's our third volleyball person on the podcast with Shani Lipscomb and Carly Wopat. So, Missy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I always feel exhausted when I hear my introduction and all the many things that I do.
Oh, well then don't write down that you do so much. She's got a master's. She's got all the letters after her name: USAW, CSCS, all the alphabet soup. So she's smart and she has hands-on experience. So, Missy, first question: you prefer playing beach volleyball or indoor?
For sure, beach, particularly at this juncture in my life when, to be perfectly honest, landing on a hard court hurts.
Mm,
Landing on a beach court does not.
gotcha. So for the longevity, right?
It's a longevity, but also I think I like the tactical side of the beach sport where it's more of a, like, I've heard it called an individual sport that you play with a partner, right? So it's kind of like you offensively, it's you versus an opponent, and just kind of the strategy that goes into it. Plus, like, it's more active. You get to touch the ball more, like, than you do in indoor sixes. And it's also a niche sport that not a lot of people understand and appreciate. They kind of look at it as something that happens in the Olympics, but it's one of the greatest, to me, environments to go watch at the professional level. And I think it's super underrated. So love to play it, love to watch it. Definitely prefer it over the indoor game. Sorry to the athletes that I work with that play indoor.
You gotta be correct about the environment. It's on beaches, water nearby, alcohol flowing everywhere. Great uniforms, sunny outside. Like that sounds outstanding. So if you can go to the Olympics for your country right now, and it's gonna be on the beach team or the indoor team, which would you prefer?
Like I'm playing or I'm
You,
going and watching.
like you're playing,
Oh, for sure, beach, like no question.
no question. All right. So now it comes down. It's in the finals. We're in the medal round, and it's for the gold, and it's you versus what are we gonna say? We're going to go against Russia, and it comes down to this last point. It's like overtime. It's set five, and we need either a big dig to win, or a block, or a spike, or an ace on a serve. Which one do you want it to be for you? Which
Um, I like for my own personal game, I would really love to hit somebody with just like a trashy like two ball to win the Olympic gold medal just because it's so demoralizing to the opponent.
So not only are we going to take the medal, you're going to go home and feel bad about yourself for the next 4 years, and I want you to feel that way, courtesy of Missy Mitchell McBeth.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. I
Yeah,
will not lose a moment of sleep over how I won that game, but you will lose many hours of sleep over the fact that you lost in that way.
gotcha. Outstanding. So you've been around for 20 plus years in the sport. Can you talk about one or two of the trends, progressions, changes you witnessed in the last couple decades that are good and or bad?
Like with the sport itself or with
You,
training for the sport.
with training athletes for sport, because you work with student athletes, right? Talk about the trends you've seen with those students in the sport of volleyball.
Um, I think there's more exposure to strength and conditioning, which is a great thing, right? So when I was in high school, it was basically like a 6 week off season, and that was it. That's all the training that you did. now you have, like you mentioned, Scott and PSM, you have organizations like that. You have the club that I work for that has strength and conditioning on site. And so it's more readily accessible to volleyball players where 20 years ago it was just for football, right? So that's the good. The bad is I don't know that there's a lot of vetting of that quite often. So you get people who are, I saw someone post a video of their like plyo and speed clinic or whatever for volleyball players, and it's like they've got a bunch of 12-year-olds doing depth jumps, and I'm like, okay, these kids can't even like hop and land on a single leg. They can't jump repeatedly. They have no technique whatsoever. And we're going to apply like something that was designed to like shock the system for elite level athletes. So I think with the uptick in strength and conditioning, there's, the uptick in like all the cool methods and chasing numbers and outputs and that kind of things where it's like, these kids don't have a training background, so we need to basically be going in and laying a foundation. As far as like actual methods, I think it kind of started with like an interest in either increasing vertical or preserving the health of the shoulder and kind of, like I said, those methods can be all over the place from things that are like wildly inappropriate, like depth jumps for really young athletes, or things that just waste time, like tying a TheraBand to the net and doing like 20,000 reps of shoulder before practice. So that's kind of what I've seen. I think more and more, and I'm starting, and some of it is like I'm curating who I follow and what I see online. I'm seeing more and more people actually preaching, quality technique from an arm swing mechanics standpoint. Like that's actually the presentation I did at PSM was talking about how we can supplement that in the weight room and in strength and conditioning. Well, now like the next evolution for myself is I'm actually going to go learn to teach the volleyball arm swing. I come from a volleyball coaching background, but it's been 20 years. And in that time, the mechanics of how the swing is taught have completely changed based on what they're researching. So like I'm going to go upskill in that to see like how can I blend what I'm doing off the court with what happens on the court, both from a performance standpoint, but also from a longevity standpoint.
So you mentioned that, like at your club, they also have strength and conditioning as a component, and it works in tandem with the practices and the games and such. And there's plenty of clubs that do not have that, where it's just practices and games, right?
Yep.
And so I'm not sure how to quantify which clubs have strength and conditioning or those that do not. I would say that I've seen a lot that do not, and consequently it's just practice and play, practice and play, practice and play. And I would totally agree that it seems that the trend in the industry is that they're adding that component. It's not just football or basketball or wrestling, that other sports are adding that more and more. High schools are adding it more and more. So then there's a learning curve. Yeah, all right, we're adding it. Let's make sure it's good. It's not good. What about the kids? Because I was mentioned before, I have a niece and my wife has a niece. They both play high school volleyball. One's already going to be going to college to play. The other one, well, she's going to be tall enough, but she still has some work to do where they don't have strength and conditioning as part of it. Because I go to these tournaments and they're jumping 1,000 times in a weekend, plus what they did during the week, and they're landing and landing and landing. And I was talking to my brother, he doesn't know, he's an accountant. And I'm like, just look up and down the bench, how many people are in boots or have ACL tears, what percentage, because it's a lot of strain and they're trying to exert force and they can't receive it. What do you talk about the trend that some kids just play 8, 10, 12 months a year with none of that strength and conditioning and injury risk, et cetera?
What do I say to that is RIP. Like the reality is that is the driving force behind the uptick in injury in youth sports. And right now we've seen FIFA come out and say like, oh, we're going to heavily study the menstrual cycle in the coming years to like see if we can attribute that to the rise in ACL tears. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, like the menstrual cycle's been around since the dawn of soccer, last I checked.
Yeah.
And so to try to say that that is the sole contributor or even really the main driving force behind the uptick in ACL tears is honestly pretty ridiculous. Now, if the menstrual cycle had just
Came out
evolved
of
in the
nowhere.
last 10 years, like out of nowhere. Here it is. Like, what a shock that would have been for the first person to receive it, right? Like,
Right.
and then we could, maybe correlate that with injury reduction or with the uptick in injuries. But, you know, um, yeah, I mean, again, it's like if you're not doing something to prepare yourself for the demands of sport, you're not training. To me, it's kind of like I would never just go to a tournament never having practiced volleyball, right?
Right.
But that's exactly what we do from a physical development standpoint. We go to practice never having done anything to train for the rigors of 10, 12 hours a week, 6, 10 games on a weekend or whatever. So unfortunately, what you have is you have some athletes that are, I mean, I guess it's not unfortunate. It's fortunate for them that they're able to make it through the meat grinder. But people look at that and say, well, she was successful specializing early and she was successful without any strength and conditioning. Therefore, it can work for me. And unfortunately, what you have is, the road to that pat or that the road to that, performance level is littered with the bodies of kids that didn't make it, or the kids that honestly got burnt out because they didn't play another sport, or because the sport was professionalized from the moment they stepped out of the womb. They started, in a system that's monetized. Um,
Totally agree. We had Dr. Klutwijk on. He's the knee specialist with the Colts, Indiana State football. He's on international boards, and it's just ACLs, ACLs all the time. And he worked on, he does meniscus stuff too, because I know that because he did both those things for my wife. And we walk in there and we see all the pictures on the wall of all the athletes. And he spoke with us. He's on the show, did one of our summits, and he's like, "Yeah, there's training imbalances. He goes, if you just curled all the time with no tricep work, you're gonna have some problems with your arms. So when they jump, and if their quads are stronger and their hamstrings and glutes and core are weak, add in a ton of volume. Like, yeah, injuries through the roof. Just get them stronger in the most basic way that you can. Nothing even special. Nothing super special. You don't need to squat with chains and bands, right? Just start pushing some sleds forward and backwards, right? Do some basic lifting and bulletproof your body, and then they're not going to get killed. And you're right, there are the anomalies. In the bell curve, there are the two tails, which are those statistical anomalies where every once in a while someone makes it through, right? Or a couple kids make it through because they just lucked out. But you make the bet on what the statistic correlations are. It turns out for me specifically, if I studied Monday through Friday, I did better on that test versus just showing up Friday having not studied. Because I have some F's and I have some A's on tests. And I can tell you what happened. It wasn't like, oh man, I came out of nowhere, right? So if you really want to have an option to or a chance to do well, just follow the proven patterns, right? So I went on your site and I checked things out and I saw that there's a course on conditioning for volleyball. I thought, all right, that's cool. Then I thought, well, is this going to be one of those coaches who's just about just doing tons of work and tons of jogging, and or is it going to be some interval training, or what about actual absolute strength work, speed strength work? Is this going to be a coach who's just about conditioning? So then I did some more research, looked at your pages, and thought, well, shoot, she's preaching strength, she's preaching speed, she's preaching mechanics. It's not just a one-trick pony of conditioning. It's just a piece that you put up that's valuable. Talk about your overall philosophy of building an athlete. Your overall philosophy of building an athlete.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I used to have that wonderful job interview answer that I could like rip through and, three bullet points or whatever. And now it's like 20 years in, I'm like, I just, whatever works, I'm going to do that. I guess is my training philosophy. But, you know, with volleyball specifically, like the root behind the conditioning courses, one of the things that you see is people just doing these CrossFit style workouts or hard for the sake of hard, or that's it. It's just circuits in the gym. Like that's the sum total of their strength and conditioning course or their strength and conditioning work. So that's why I have the book that came out well before the course to say like, hey, speed, power, strength is king. That's going to be 80 to 90% of our programming. Now, there are situations where I'm not going to do any conditioning with the athletes that I train because I have such a limited amount of time that I'm going to go for the buckets that aren't being filled through practice and competition, which we can split hairs over whether or not conditioning actually is, but I know for a fact they're getting some, but they're probably not getting any max output work on the court. So they're not getting speed. They're not getting actually max height jumping, whether you think they are or not. They're not getting change of direction work. They're certainly not getting, or anything, sorry, they're getting all those things, but they're not getting it at an intensity necessarily that they need to see progress. So we're going to chase those things first, strength, power, speed, and then durability. And then we're going to layer in conditioning as it fits in with their programming. So kind of the rationale behind having a course that specializes in that is to kind of say like, hey, instead of you just blindly like throwing things at the wall from a conditioning standpoint, here's the science. Now, are your training programs actually looking at these physiological adaptations that we need for the court? How is that addressing it? Or are you just doing things in the gym to run around and make it hard and make your athletes tired?
Yeah.
That was not I did not answer your question whatsoever about my training philosophy in any sort of like linear fashion. Hopefully that hit it.
I heard strength, power, and speed right off the bat.
I feel like I can kind of,
and then conditioning later. Go ahead, Lucas.
I feel like I can relate to that though. Working with high school kids, and we always get a cycle of kids that's never trained before or have a low training age. I've always kind of struggled with the training philosophy question, just because whatever works is kind of a really good answer in a way, but sometimes you got to meet the athletes where they're at, and sometimes some athletes are higher, some athletes are lower, and you just kind of have to figure that out, especially if you're working with bigger athletes. So your training philosophy that might have worked the year before doesn't necessarily work this year. And I went through that, in the past 2 years. 2 years ago, my idea of training and what I thought would work completely didn't work for this new group of kids that I had. And I was just like, what is just not working here? And I just kept beating my head on the door. I was like, I can't figure it out. And I was like, well, these kids just don't respond to that, what we were doing like the kids beforehand, so meeting the kids where they're at and figuring out what's going to be best for, especially if you work with group training, what's going to be best for this group of kids, maybe this class as opposed to this class. It's all the same. Maybe we're all doing the same program, but how you approach that workout or that day might be different. So,
yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I guess if I have to give you my 3 bullet points or whatever, it's safety, culture, and performance. Like that's what we need to handle in the weight room. So like safety, like my consulting company is called Safe Iron. So like obviously we're big on that. Like you said with high school kids, that's number one. And like you don't realize until you transition from the collegiate level to the high school level how fully capable kids are of harming themselves in ways that you never could have imagined. Like I had a kid. This is a real story. And this is the reason that I will never have a child on a band doing band assisted pull-ups again for the rest of my life. She's standing on a band and I coach her by name, and she turns around and lets go of the chin-up bar with her feet in the band.
Oh God.
And in that moment I was like, I now have to sit and think about literally everything that could possibly go wrong, and then find 5 more things that could go wrong. And I won't even scratch the surface of the ways that kids will harm themselves in the weight room, right? So safety has to be number one. I think culture is something that I pushed off the wayside. It was like, it's performance, but most of these kids were prepping to go out into the regular world. Like a few minuscule percent are going to go play sports. So like, are we having them develop a healthy relationship with exercise? Like, are we teaching them some kind of life skills of like accountability, like a little bit of discipline? Like, are we being a good person for them to be around? And then performance obviously is the big piece. Like it's strength and conditioning. At some point you have to make your athletes better. Like you can be as safe as you want. You can be as, accountable and all the things. But if like ultimately you're not making kids better, that stuff is going to fall by the wayside very quickly because they're not going to stick with your program.
The other thing I like that you mentioned before was, I didn't really say it like this, but taking the low hanging fruit. So if the athletes are already getting some conditioning in their sport, but no lifting and strength anywhere else. All right, we'll work us on lifting and strength because we've not done it. So It's a complete limiting factor. It's the weak link in the chain. If I bring that up just a little, bam, we're better. We've had a coach come in and he was great on sprint mechanics. And so if a kid comes in and has no idea how to run straight, well, we do the basics of sprint mechanics, bam, better, right? So for a lot of people, for quite a long time, doing the most basic, low-hanging fruit things has a lot of ROI, a lot of return on investment. I don't need all the fancy gimmicks. If the kid can't one times body weight squat, well, we can't do a push up. We got
Yeah.
plenty of things we can do.
Yep, 100%. And people and like strength has really fallen out of fashion. And I feel like the last 5 years where people are like, oh no, they're not gonna like increase their vertical by just getting stronger. And I'm like, they might. Like
Yeah, a little bit.
a lot of kids will, and I've got some data, like some pretty compelling data from the, first year that I was a high school strength coach where we weren't jumping at all or focusing on anything and everybody's verticals went up because we simply got a little bit stronger. We simply got a little bit more coordinated. Now, is that going to last forever? Absolutely not. Like, are we going to continue to chase max strength? No, we've got to change our training. But like you said, when there's low hanging fruit, go grab it and then go find the next piece.
Is there an overall fear, you think, high school, collegiately, of absolute strength? So I'm gonna go ahead and
Uh,
say yeah.
Collegiately, I don't think so because collegiately, it's like your job's literally on the line on like performance, right? So you're not gonna just, you know, go demonize things that have worked since the dawn of strength and conditioning. I think at the high school level, I don't know that it's necessarily a fear. I think it's almost like trend chasing of what are we seeing, elite level athletes do, or what are we seeing at the next level, or what's making me popular on social media. So we're going to go do those things and we're going to give this like strong enough claim. But I've not found there to be a whole lot of high school athletes outside of football that I would say we're now pushing strength to the detriment of other qualities, right? Because
Right.
there's just not the amount of time that you need to really get there, right? So I don't
Yeah.
think I haven't seen too many high school volleyball players where I'm like, pump the brakes, we're too strong. You know
Okay.
what I mean? Like
Exactly.
now we might need to allocate our training a little bit differently to go, pursue jumping or pursue change of direction or speed or whatever it is. But the whole notion that like we're just, focusing too much on strength, I think is like it borders on absurdity sometimes.
I think you're right, man. About football, people are pushing numbers there. They see the direct correlation. They forget about it in every other sport. And you'll hear about velocity-based training, the Parisi speed school, right? People want to talk about speed, speed, and speed. I'm like, well, you have to keep moving your absolute strength number up as well for that speed number. If you're speed squatting 225 and your max squat is 235, right? What the hell's going on there? That absolute strength number must keep going up. And you watch like Lasha in the Olympics, the big enormous dude from Georgia that moves all the weight. Well, when he's snatching in the low 500 pounds and it lands over his head in that overhead squat, he stands up really, really fast because his absolute strength is like 750, 800, right? So his speed strength moves up along with it. And I find if someone's just doing the absolute strength, they're missing the boat. If they're doing just speed strength or just bodybuilding, repetition strength, they're missing the boat. And yeah, I'm not coming across high school kids at all, and a lot of college kids are like, "Man, you're strong enough, man. We're good there." No, it seems like people are just nervous about putting that weight on because they're worried about injury. But I'm like, well, moving lighter weights really, really fast has the same injury risk. You're doing more reps at really, really fast. Like it's all risk, right? But to your point, the intensity has to be there for there to be enough stimulus for the adaptation to occur. We had Shani Lipscomb on. She played for New Mexico State and then played for Peru. And I said, how did you get to that level? How did you keep progressing? And other people that you were friends with at a young age, how did they not make it? Because I go, were people better than you? She goes, yeah. She goes, a lot of it is just outlasting everyone else. And I see you shaking your head. I go, what does that mean outlasting? Like, did you outwork them? She says, no, people just end up just falling off when they can't handle it or they quit or whatever. To keep moving forward, is it all about beating everybody else or is it some of it just keeping going, being consistent and outlasting everybody else? What do you think there, Missy?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, you have to have some kind of, like, if you're going to go to that kind of level, like you're playing professionally, you're playing for your country. Like, yes, like you do have to beat other people. It's a competition, obviously, but a lot of that is winning the battle against yourself every day, right? Of like, I think we each inside of us have someone that's lazy, that we kind of have to battle, like to find our motivation and go train and be consistent, whether it's, from a nutrition perspective or recovery perspective or just our training. Like, yes, you have to be a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday. So I think you're actually fighting both. Like, you have to be super consistent with yourself so that you can go beat other people.
Gotcha. Then we had Carly Wopat on, and she was Team USA for beach volleyball, but I think she was an alternate. She mentioned, well, she's female, so she said she's speaking specifically for female sports, and we have two nieces, about the toxicity of travel sports and youth sports. And I see that we have four girls, between my wife and me, and two boys, and the boys are, and I love them all. Disclaimer: the boys just beat on each other and make each other upset and fuck around, and the girls, they don't do that, but they're still upset. So talk about the toxicity of travel sports and what's that like and how to handle that. Because you said culture is a big thing and culture's on the team and it's constantly ebbing and flowing and changing year to year.
And like, what direction do you want to take this? Do you want to take this coaching, athlete, parenting? So this is probably my bias because I'm not a parent, but I believe that the toxicity actually stems from parents at home. I think it stems from I think the lower a level that a parent has achieved in their own playing career, I think the more they pressure their kid to play at a level that the kid just has no business being at. I think that like there's been several posts on social media lately about like the car ride home. I think a lot of the toxicity comes from there. The kid is already done with the tournament for the day. They either know they played good or bad. Like they don't need that just continued like on replay when they're in the car or the next day, or then, hey, we got you this lesson because you struggled serving last night or whatever it is. And that come from the parents. So, and not to run down all parents, if any are listening, I think there's some wonderful parents that take a very hands-off approach or we're in this for you. But I think a lot of it comes from there. I think a lot of it also comes from the system itself. Like you have the North Texas region is notorious for being one of the highest performers in the sport of volleyball in USAV. And part of that is we've now started the tryouts for next season have already come and gone before nationals happened. So you had kids that were trying out at their same club that they're playing in nationals for this year, not being offered a spot back on next year's team. Or you have half the team that's coming back and the other half of the team is going out to other clubs and everybody knows it. And that all went down the 1st of May and they just finished up nationals. So for 6 or 7 weeks, you have this awkward kids coming in the gym. They're not coming back. Are certain coaches going to treat them some type of way? Are their teammates? Are their parents? And so you just have this like nasty storm coming from the system, right? Where that's toxic and you have all these kids that are just like, it's got to feel awkward as a kid that I'm not coming back to a club. You know what I mean? Like, and even if the adults and the teammates do handle it correctly, which I think, I've seen all of our coaches do a great job with it. Like I've not treated a kid differently because they're going to, the neighboring club or whatever, but it's just like, that's a mess. And then I think also you have a lot of kids that I was talking to a parent about this yesterday. Actually, let me say one thing about the tryout process. I'm friends with a lot of volleyball parents, and that tryout process is brutal. And like every one of them has said out loud, they're like, I don't like the person that I become during the tryout process to my kid. I don't
Mm.
like the questions I'm asking coaches. I don't like the conversations I'm having. They're like, I don't like myself, but at the same time, like they don't know how to stop it, right? They don't know how are you not shopping your kid around trying to find the best offer and the best placement for them for the next year? So the system is very broken. And then the other layer to that is you have a lot of kids that probably would just want to play recreational volleyball, right? Like they want to be a multi-sport athlete. They want to play a little season 2 or 3 months out of the year and then go to the next sport or just be a kid or whatever it is. But that's not really available very often anymore, especially after a certain age. So it's like they're kind of forced into this system of year round. And then it's like, well, if I want to play at all, I've got to make this team. And to make this team, I've got to have these lessons and go to all these practices. And so it becomes this storm of like, I don't really want to be here, but I kind of want to be here. So I have to do all the things that it takes to be here, if it makes sense. So the system is, I don't have a solution for it. The solution is if it doesn't generate as much money, right, then all of a sudden, like we would see a change. But there's just, yes, there's tons of toxicity. There's tons of stakeholders in the toxicity. There's tons of, little nuances to it that I didn't even like scratch the surface of.
Mm. Boy, it's enlightening and disgusting and depressing at
But
the same time.
yeah,
But
and I will say that there's a lot of good to it, right? Like
sure.
there was a trend that I guess it started last year, but this year, like kids put like it's the silliest little thing, but they put little clothespins on each other's bags, and one team will just go like clip the other team's bags, and it'll have like a like sweet little motivational phrase or like a little decoration. So kids are walking in the gym with like 50 clips that they've gotten from tournaments. And like our club, our owner was very clear about like, we're going to have scheduled practice theme days. We're going to have scheduled fun. We're going to have community activities that we do outside of volleyball, because this has to be more than volleyball. It has to be an experience. So I don't want to like completely run down the model, because obviously I work within the system. And I think there's a lot of people that are trying to do things the right way. But even with that, the overarching like system is just this flywheel that's just in motion, right? And it's hard for anybody to like jump off, or hard for anybody to stop and change that system. So while there's good in it, there's tons of really, really concerning things.
Man, that's tough. That's really tough. You know, um, it's weird. My oldest son, he plays D1 football, and growing up, his dad owns a gym, so he can go and work out more. But sometimes he just didn't want to hear any coaching from me at all, whether it was at home or at the gym. And I could be telling him how to squat correctly or whatever, and it was just, hey, don't fucking talk to me, right? So I'd have another coach. Hey, you know what, Chad? Doctor is an awesome coach that we had. I'm like, hey, you got Jack from here on out, man. I don't want him, right? And he definitely doesn't want me. And Chad's telling him the same thing. Tell him the same thing, but just needs to hear it from someone else. Here's the hard part. They say like the kid's brain doesn't develop fully till age 25. So then you give the kid choices at 14. You're 10 years away. I'm 50 and I still do dumb boy stuff. Hold my beer, watch this kind of thing, right? I'm lucky to get through the fourth every year. And so what you do is you lead by example as a parent. Hey, I want to work hard, right? And be disciplined, etc. But to your point, you got to have fun along the way. Enjoyment is one of our core values, and I don't really love that one, but that's 100% required, because you got to kind of enjoy what you're doing, or it's not sustainable. And then you have to, hey, you're at this level. If you want to move up here, it's up to you. I never even played at your level, Jack. I'm never going to play at that level. So if you're doing it because to make me happy or proud, I'm already proud of you. And for me and in front of God, you are enough, even if you stop playing right now. And you got to mean that. However, Jack, if you want to go to this next level, here's what you can work on. Here's someone else you can talk to. Here's what you can do. You need help? Come ask me. Come ask someone else. You don't want help? Tell me to fuck off. Totally cool. I got plenty of things to do with my time and my money on the weekends than to send it to some travel league. I like to go on another vacation. I'd like to go do a whole bunch of things. You guys don't want to do that? Totally cool. Only 2% are playing D1 and only 7% playing college, so don't care. I think you're right though. Parents see that kid doing things that he didn't do or she didn't do, and they're like, "Hey man, come on, let's go do this, so I can be proud of you, so I can say to my neighbor, hey, let's see what my kid's doing. Look at that." Because as a coach, or you're a coach, don't you feel pride when one of your kids does well, right?
Sure.
There's satisfaction there. Same thing as a parent, but it's that line that gets blurred. And if I had the magic answer and the consistent answer, I'd be a lot wealthier than I am putting out a course on that kind of thing. Um, but that is a tough one. And there's a lot of stakeholders making a lot of money, and the assets are the kids playing. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so you made it all the way to college. You outlasted everybody. Are you 6'5"? No, right?
No,
Just worked hard. And
just
I
work.
asked you a question about mindset, and you're like, man, just suck it up and do it. When I would do this little survey question beforehand. You're like, what are you talking about mindset? What's your thoughts there? Just suck it up, man. Just get it done. So, is that what you just say when the kids ask you, hey, man, how do I get a little mentally tougher?
I mean, on that, like, my answer is like that's out of my scope of practice, honestly. Like, I think that if you're to the point where you're starting to ask questions about that, like, you need to go and talk to someone that specializes in mental performance. I think that I have, just like I can give you some, oh, here's what to eat for breakfast, or like fueling is important. Like, I can give you those like little canned answers as far as like mental toughness is concerned, but ultimately, like, I'm just going to refer out at this point in my career because I just think that that's such a critical element of performance that it needs to be specialized. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, my ultimate answer, like for myself, is like to me, like mental toughness has come from the circumstance sucked. I didn't want to do what I did. I did it anyway. You practice doing that enough, and all of a sudden, it's like that just becomes habit of like, okay, situation's not optimal, whatever. Or, like some of it is, what is it, the Ted Lasso, like be a goldfish, like, and this is something I don't do well, like that I never did well as a player, is I was not able to forget and move on. I think Brian Kane says, so what next play? Like, I love that phrase and I love that idea. Not successful with it myself because my brain is just spiraling around like what I did and what I need to do better and all the things. But I think those are like some kind of key components to the mindset piece.
See,
I think the next play is too broad. So if your arms are coming apart and you're coming to block, the direction can't be broad. It has to be arms together or something like that, right? All right, next play, arms together. So now you have a directive. There's an action verb, not just, hey, next play. Yeah, I fucking know the next play's coming, buddy. I'm still
Right.
upset about the last play. I'm not told what to do next. That because your focus goes where your energy flows, right? So I wanted to focus on the next task and this action. The kid takes a ball, goes down looking at the plate, and he goes up there, and you're like, hey man, next at bat. Yeah, I know that. You say don't strike out. Well, guess what he does? He hears strikeout. That's the verb. You say drive the ball, see ball, drive ball, right? And I think that's it. And to your point, also as a coach and what we do here, I'm like we're more like GMs or head coaches, and that we're all right at everything, pretty good at one thing, but when you want at the other things that are need someone really a higher level, you got to bring in that teammate that's better than you. Like I'm good at nutrition, my wife's great. I'm mediocre to bad at recovery. The trainer we have at the gym is outstanding, right? So you're right. Go just leverage other folks and then provide a better product that way. Don't just feel like you got to be everything because you're not. What were you say, Luke?
yeah, I was just, do you feel like kids, you know, high school kids have a more of a mental, I don't want to say mental illness, but like 'cause I don't want to. Kids aren't mentally tough, and then all of a sudden a kid has mental illness or something. I don't want to get into that, but I feel like kids don't have a like a pain tolerance or a durability threshold that they know how to work through, you know, especially, for example, today, just as a couple hours ago today, I'm working with a kid. He's a freshman. Um, I'm introducing front squats to freshmen today. And what do I hear about, what do I hear everybody hears about front squats? Well, my wrists are hurting. I was like, all right, well, he's like, well, I gotta get therapy on my wrist. I was like, well, what happened? He's like, I don't know, it's always been this way. I can't bend my wrist back this far. Okay, well, all right, let's go do some goblet squats. All right, we're gonna do goblet squats instead. Well, I can't do goblet squats. My knees. I gotta get therapy on my knees also. You're a football player, bud. What is I don't do I need to go look at your medical record or what's going on, man? I don't even think I can do that, but you get what I'm saying? I just feel like there's a lower threshold of what kids are gonna go through during training or during any physical activity.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like that's been said since the dawn of time, right? Like every generation fancies themselves tougher than the current
Mm-hmm.
generation. And like while I'll agree that I think what it is I think kids are more aware of, where I was in high school, it was just like something hurts. Well, until it gets to the point that we're going to the doctor, like you're just dealing with it,
Yeah.
right? Like now kids have access to a PT and AT, like all of these resources that are known to them. Now, is that a bad thing? No, because they have access to it. Can it become a bad thing when it becomes a crutch and it's just constantly in the training room? Yes, but there's always been diary of a wimpy kid going on like since I've been coaching for 20 years like and I would have those kids that like every hangnail was like I actually have a post coming out where I talk about this like kids will come with like the most minor thing and I'll just be like, well, do we need to amputate now or should we wait until like after the workout and see how it does? And like when you put it to them like that, like a lot of times kids will be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I could probably make it. And of course I'm not going to like before anyone gets triggered, like I don't actually have a bone saw at training, even though I tell them I do, and I'm not actually going to amputate. But um, I do think there is some measure of, kids are used to immediate gratification, and so there's less of a tolerance for discomfort. But I don't think that that's necessarily a new problem. I don't know. Maybe
Uh,
that's just
Back in my day kind of deal, right?
yeah, yeah.
Until you get back to the greatest generation and all that, all those people that came back from World War II.
Now,
They
I
seem
will
to,
say that there are like some measures in place. Like our soccer coach at the high school I was at previously made a good point about like the cold weather policy. He's like, we never used to have a cold weather policy 20 years ago, and kids would go out in shorts and a t-shirt in like freezing weather and be completely fine. Now we have better cold gear than has ever existed, and it's
yes.
like for Texas, I think it's like the wind chill is 20. Oh, no, no, no. We can't go outside for practice. And that's probably for up north. Like maybe that's different. But like down here, it's D-Day when it's under 20. Same thing like for people up north in the heat. Like for us, we're like 105. Maybe we'll drink a little bit more water, but otherwise we're good. Versus other areas of the country, like that might be a little bit more dire.
Mm-hmm.
But you think back to you used to hear like people weren't allowed water breaks and whatever, and we can be like, oh, well, they were just tougher. And it's like, no, there was less press coverage of athletes dying in training back then. Like it was still just as big of a problem, more than likely.
The other thing, people live on the equator and still run, and people live up in the Arctic and still snowshoe and dog sled, right? So people do things wherever they're at. Everyone just adapts. No one likes to adapt. No one likes to change, but that's the deal. And doing it incrementally is really the best way to do it. If you move from the equator up to the Arctic, you're going to be a miserable person, and vice versa. And I know from being from Cleveland with all the snow, moving down to hot ass Texas, I'll be like, oh my God, the heat. But come snow time, like, we live in Indiana. Jack went an entire year through the winter with no pants. It was shorts every day except for church. Every day. And I think he even wore shorts to church. Every day was shorts. shorts. Like, it's January, bro. He goes, yeah, well, I'm just riding the bus. I'm just riding a car. I'll be fine.
Well, and like
All
that
right.
was, I mean, kind of like to kind of agree with Lucas's point, like that was, when I was growing up, it'd be cold outside, and of course, cold in Texas is relative, right? And I just didn't like pants. I didn't like the way they felt, so I wanted to wear shorts. And my mom was just like, okay, suffer. Like,
Yeah,
just go be cold. And like I hear all the time parents having these like knockdown, drag out arguments with their kids in the morning, forcing their kids into pants, and then like the kid just needs to go to school and learn the lesson that they're too cold,
that's
right?
right. Yeah,
Now
let him
we
go.
now we have this like constant like parent bailout and whatever, and again there's some merit, like we were talking about. I mean, obviously there's been like a truly terrible situation in Texas with the flooding,
Yeah, I saw
and I
that.
was talking to one of my friends, and she was like, we really try not to be anxious parents, and we try to let our kids live their lives, and we try to let them, take some risks and whatever, because we feel like that builds confidence. She's like, but at the same time, you look at what happened this week, and parents sent their children to a camp, and through no one whatsoever's fault, those children unfortunately have passed away. So it's like very difficult to not be an anxious parent. So like, while I do think, exactly what you're talking about, Lucas, is that like there's just maybe not as much pain tolerance because there's a constant bailout of like, oh, I can go see this, or mommy will take me here, or I'm going to go get my chiropractor note, or whatever it is. I don't want to sit here and like say that that's completely a parent's fault, because when you look around you, like, you don't want your child to be hurting, like you don't want something to happen to your kids. So again, it's like, I don't really have a solution for like how do we toughen kids up when there's all these constraints, or how do we tell parents like, oh, your kid's not dying, or your kid's not going to get rhabdo, when they look in the news and they see that an athlete died at training, or an athlete did get rhabdo. Like, so there's some legitimate reasons, I guess, why it's a trickle down effect, right? The parents are anxious about training because they've seen it in the news. The kids are then anxious because mommy's always going to bail them out. Like, I don't know. Um, it's an interesting topic for sure.
I try to counsel them to make your bet based on the probabilities. What's the probability of that flood happening in 12 inches in 4 hours was the rainfall? How often does that happen? Every 100 years? So like, statistically, it's not going to happen again, right? The probability of that person getting rhabdo, well, let's look at what they did. How out of shape were they? Did they do a whole bunch of training that day that they should have? Okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. It was induced. How many other kids trained that day? How many other kids trained in that sport that day in Texas? How many kids trained in that sport across the country? How many got rhabdo, right? Is there a trend? Then you got to ask yourself, is there a trend? Well, it seems in this program with this coach, these problems happen all the time. ACL tears everywhere. Goodbye. Right? This
Yep.
other person, hey, they're super safe, but they're getting killed on the football field because they're super weak. Hey, no injuries in the weight room, but they're all full of concussions and broken arms, right? So you look at this. What's the probabilities? Make your bet that way, because there's car accidents every day, and there's problems with planes. You got to decide if you can drive a car or not, and then look for trends. When I ask you the question about teammates, because no one really gets there alone, you go, what? It's the stunning realization that everyone is not me. And dealing with teammates, I go, what's your advice on building relationships with teammates? I'm shocked. Everyone's not me.
Yeah, I mean, when I was that was one of the hardest learning curves for me as a young coach, is like when I saw kids that weren't tough and were complaining, trying to get out of things, or they, weren't disciplined, or they didn't work hard or whatever. I was just like so frustrated, because I was like, why? Basically, my mindset is like, well, I wouldn't do it that way. You know what I mean? And so, like, over the years, like, with peer to peer interactions with other coaches, it's like, well, I can't expect them. And I've made a lot of mistakes along the way with building relationships, with working within a team, simply because I expected other people to respond or react or act in a certain situation with a piece of information exactly as I did. And that's just not how things work. And so you have to, when you're working with a team, when you're working with an athlete, like, you talked about it earlier, like what is their why? Like figure out, what their motivation is, but also why they're doing things a certain way. And often, like, I've found myself, in early years, I'd be like, no, it has to be exactly this way. And like, I'd see a kid doing something, quote, wrong. And I'm like, I actually think I like that better. So, and they'd be like, well, oh, that's not what you said. I need to do it. And I'm like, no, actually, just keep doing that thing because I like it better. Right. So I think when we free ourselves up from having to like, you know, be a dictator and like control everything in our surroundings and realize like other people have things to bring to the table and let them bring those things to the table. I think that, I mean, kind of that gets into self-determination theory, right? It's like allowing people to be competent, allowing people to feel connected, allowing people to be, what's the third piece? Why am I forgetting this? It's literally on a slide right above me on my second monitor. But, just allowing people to be themselves basically within, obviously there's some limits there. But yeah, that was again, like it seems like the most basic principle, but for Missy Mitchell McBeth, hard-headed human being, like figuring out like not everybody's going to do it exactly like I say was a big thing for me.
So you could say, hey, we want our team to be resilient, strong as can be, super fast, but we're going to be flexible in how we get there, right?
Absolutely.
We want these things from our kids. But to Lucas's point, hey, this year's kids are a little different. We're still going to be strong. We're going to be faster. We're going to be resilient, but we're doing it a little bit differently this year, and that's okay. Um, I see you're still playing volleyball instead of beer league kind of deal, weekend warrior. I don't know if it's get drunk, hold my beer. Or is it beer in hand volleyball like in our fraternity? Like we used to, that was a rule. You couldn't play in our volleyball court in a fraternity unless you had a beer in your hand. I'm sure yours is a little bit more structured than we were. Um, but training wise, what do you listen to when you train?
Um, Very often these days, I listen to complete silence because I am just so overwhelmed with all of the screens. And like, I've got three phones and two computers and a second monitor on this desk right now. Like, sometimes I just need to not have something going in the background.
Little Zen Buddhist in the squat rack. All right. What's a bucket list adventure for you and your husband that you guys haven't gone on yet?
I want to go to Bora Bora and do
Lucas,
one
where
of
is that?
the,
Where's Bora Bora? Do you know where that is? I don't know. I've
South,
heard of it.
south of here.
South somewhere? Yeah, somewhere south.
it's off the coast of Tahiti in the Pacific. It's the little like the
Well,
overwater bungalows that like you can see
Uh,
like the ocean from the floor.
it's 6 hours from California to Hawaii. It's like another eight to Tahiti, I think.
It's a solid like 24. Like it's a whole like 2 day thing to get out there and then 2 days to get home. Like it's not a
How
that's why
bad do
it's
you
a
want to be away from
bucket
all the people?
list. That's why it's a bucket list, not an everyday adventure, right?
Yes, totally agree. Favorite sport to watch?
Beach volleyball, of course.
Okay. Favorite sports movie?
Did I answer that on the sheet? Hold on, I got the
You
sheet
sure
pulled
don't
up.
look it up. Let's go
Remember,
with
no,
what. Wait.
I'm gonna look at it because I can't
Oh, you
remember.
cheater.
Because my answer is gonna be something like Space Jam or
That's
wait, wait,
fine.
wait, wait. No, I didn't answer that sports movie. I said they're all dumb. That's my
Yeah,
answer.
I don't know. I think Space Jam's really your answer. Deep down subconsciously. Cartoons and basketball,
The Space Jam song is a bop even after all these years. Sorry.
right? I love some of the sports movies, man. They make you tear up. You watch, Miracle about the hockey team, or man, being from Cleveland, the Major League. How funny that is! Come on now, they're all
Let
dumb.
me
Yeah,
tell
they're
you,
all dumb. They're all dumb. Who cares?
I'm going to tell you what ruins sports movies for me, and that is working in collegiate athletics and working with walk-ons. And then I remember the movie Rudy, and I was like, everything's a lie.
Nah,
Everything is like,
that guy's never gonna see.
right, exactly. No, they would get in, but they're not just this like hero, like conquering hero that we all, not all of them. Some of them are wonderful human beings, but anyway, yeah.
A lot of walk-ons eat a lot of shit and don't make it, and some do, right? And some are praised, and some are still eating shit and never respected once they're there. So the whole gamut. What's your favorite athlete to watch? Any sport?
Brandy Wilkerson and beach volleyball.
She's your Michael Jordan,
Um,
pretty
sure,
much.
yeah. Yeah, she's Canadian, but she plays here domestically in the AVP league. But she's just like she's only 5'10", but she's like an incredible athlete, just phenomenal athlete.
Favorite book? This is my wife's favorite question.
My favorite book. Um,
She's gonna look
my
again.
book. No, my least favorite book, even though my book is wonderful, my least favorite book to look at is mine. I love Hank the Cowdog books. They are written in Texas. They're little kids' books. My dad and I used to read them together growing up, and there's just never been a book that I've liked better. So,
Oh, I'll send you mine then. That way you won't have to hate yours as much. Favorite superhero? This could be a real life person or fictional.
um, favorite superhero. Fictional, I like Wolverine best.
Why?
Um, One, I just really like all the Marvel movies. I like X-Men stuff. I don't know why. I started watching Wolverine as a cartoon.
Yeah,
And then just like I think the dark like when they did Logan, I just think like the dark tone of the movie. Like I kind of like dark hero movies. So like all the Batman series, I like that.
sure. And then for a villain,
Bane.
really in the Batman series, most people say the Joker.
I don't know. I just like Bane, you only adopted the darkness line, like that. I was born in it, like, and he's just, I don't know. He's like big and cool, and like wears a mask, and that's actually one of my dog's nicknames is Bane because she like has a little muzzle that she has to wear sometimes.
Plus, Tom Hardy's a good looking dude, right? And he's kind of jacked and he's badass.
Sure, I guess.
Okay, he's not good looking dude. All right. Favorite lift?
RDL.
Okay.
Why? Just curious.
What do you mean why? It's like it's the greatest lift there is. Like you can lift heavy, it's posterior chain, like it has a like big eccentric component, like what is not to love? Like it is a 1A exercise even though people make it 4C, like
Yeah,
all the way.
yeah. I just personally have always like, oh man, RDLs. Ugh, here we go.
Well, you're just not per your previous remark, you must not be mentally
I'm
tough.
not
Like you
that. I am
just
Ooh,
not that guy.
ooh,
I am not that
ooh.
guy.
My wife goes apeshit for RDL. She's like, "Oh my God, it's all hamstrings and butt. Let's go. Like, who cares? This is great. It's all hamstrings and butt. It's all hamstrings and butt." You have a favorite quote for us? Yeah, right. It's the compound interest effect. It's true. It's proven in water over a rock, economic cycles, whole empires. Consistency is king. Tell us what's the name of your book?
thanks for having me.
Gotcha.
You too.
And where can we find you? Gotcha. And I see you're also on LinkedIn, obviously, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, even. He has her own YouTube channel. Puts out a lot of great content. She does. Missy puts out a lot of great content. Here's the correct way to do this exercise. Here's why we're building the posterior chain. Here's why we're building speed. Here's what your shoulder. Here's how to improve your shoulder health from all the swings. Right. So if you want to be better, she puts out a lot of great things. If you're following along at home, you could. Oh, there you go.
How about that? Look what I found.
Look at that. They both have their book. I don't have that one. I have at mine. There it is. So if you're following along at home, you want to email us, you got questions, info@athlete-builder.com. Website's athlete-builder.com. The book is there. The workbook is there. The digital course is there, how we build athletes mentally and physically. We have last year's summit available online. Then this year's summit should be available here next week or so. We edited everything and the course is up, and then a lot more resources. So Missy, great having you on the show. Thanks for the time, the authenticity, and just working through everything and giving us your inputs on how to be better. It's invaluable. We're going to send this to everyone that we know, and especially volleyball players. Otherwise, if you guys anywhere near Texas or anywhere near a computer, look up Missy Mitchell McBeth. We were lucky to have her on the show today. Thank you so much.
Good seeing
All
you
right,
again,
see ya.
Missy.